Welcome to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive. Look, if you want the fast track to understanding the modern strategic game in rugby, especially how it meshes with the sport's biggest legal debates, this is the conversation for you. Our mission today really is to tear through a stack of sources, all looking at top-level rugby law, coaching critiques, and strategy, basically all swirling around one massive recent controversy.
And that moment, yeah, it's a red card. The permanent red given to Springboks locked Lood de Jager in that huge clash against France. We're not just looking at the foul itself, though. We need to unpack why a coach like Eddie Jones, Japan's coach, called it ridiculous refereeing. But maybe the most surprising thing from the sources is how being a man down actually highlighted, one of the most powerful trends right now, the sheer strategic impact of the power of the bench.
Absolutely. Before we really dive into all that intensity, please make sure you subscribe to Rugby Obsession. That way you won't miss any of our future deep dives. Okay, so let's go back to the Stade de France. Set the scene for us. The incident that really changed the game and maybe the whole conversation around the laws.
Right, it was a brutal match, high stakes all around. And before halftime, you have the Australian ref, Angus Gardner, making that huge call, permanent red for Lood de Jager, which meant, South Africa looking at over 40 minutes of rugby, a man down. Huge strategic implications right there.
In the contact itself, it was against the French fullback, Ramos, but it wasn't simple, was it? Ramos was already going down from another hit.
Exactly. Cobus Reinach, the scrum half, had already made contact, so Ramos is falling. It makes the dynamics really complex. De Jager went in incredibly low, clearly trying to make a low tackle. But the way the ref saw it in the analysis afterwards, it was about the illegal aspect.
Which were?
He was judged to have led with the shoulder, arm tucked in, no real attempt to wrap. And that resulted in shoulder-to-head contact with Ramos.
Okay, so he's going low, which is what players are told to do, but the technique was ruled illegal. Why no mitigation then? What part of the World Rugby process prevented that?
That's the absolute core of it. Gardner used the World Rugby Head Contact process. It's like a decision tree. If the initial contact is deemed to have a high degree of danger, like leading with the shoulder, no wrap, diving in the ref can classify it as always illegal.
Always illegal. And that means?
It means mitigation basically goes out the window. Factors like the ball carrier dropping height suddenly or the tackler being exceptionally tall like de Jager, they just don't come into play to reduce the sanction from red.
So because the way he initiated contact, the tucked shoulder, was seen as fundamentally dangerous under the current rules, arguments about height or circumstance became irrelevant for the card decision.
That's it, precisely. The focus lands squarely on that specific technique, which World Rugby is trying hard to eliminate for safety reasons. And the 4-game ban de Jager got later. That just underlines how seriously they viewed that specific action.
A 4-game ban is significant. Right, let's pivot to Eddie Jones. High-profile coach calling foul on the whole thing. He was on the Rugby Unity podcast, and his argument wasn't against safety, was it? It was about how the law was applied. He said refs need to interpret the law, not just tick the boxes.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is how he used de Jager's physical size to make his point. De Jager is, 6'8"? Jones pointed out the contact happened really low, maybe 3 foot 12 feet above the ground, and crucially, on a player already ducking from that first tackle.
So he's arguing that for a guy that tall, getting down that low should be seen as trying to comply with the low tackle focus, not as inherently reckless.
Exactly that. Jones said de Jager was trying to do everything right. He framed it as accidental head contact, definitely not carelessness. He really pushed back on the carelessness idea. Asked something like, why would he try to ram his head into the other player's head? That's just ridiculous. He saw it as, physics, big guys colliding at speed.
But you could argue, couldn't you, that Jones is maybe shifting the focus a bit? Coaches know the head contact process is strict on technique. Isn't it still on the player, regardless of height, to ensure a legal wrap attempt?
And that's the counter. David Pembroke, the podcast host, initially pushed back, saying, look, the laws have to adjudicate as written. That's their function. But Jones wasn't having it. Apparently jumped right in with, no, they have to interpret the laws. He clearly believes rigid application kills the common sense needed for such a fast game. Pembroke did seem to acknowledge the frustration later, conceding that these decisions do compromise and impact the game.
Yeah, that impact is undeniable. But let's talk about the twist. South Africa didn't crumble after that impact. Let's get into the strategic paradox here.
Right, this is fascinating. They play the whole second half, more than half the game, a man down against France, one of the best sides in the world, and they romped to victory, is a phrase used. This wasn't luck. It just threw a massive spotlight on this trend. The power of deep quality benches, the finishers, being a man down, almost forced Erasmus to play his strategic hand earlier, deploying that depth more decisively.
South Africa are kind of the pioneers of this, aren't they? The bomb squad idea. For anyone listening who isn't familiar, explain that quickly.
Sure. It's their bench strategy, often loading it with 6 forwards, 2 backs, sometimes even 7 forwards, prioritizing bringing on immense power and fresh legs, especially up front, late in the game to overwhelm tired opponents. And in this game, Erasmus made those sharp substitutions, as the sources called them, and bang, immediate impact.
Who are the key players coming on?
Grant Williams, the replacement scrum half, scored. Andre Esterhuizen came on and got a crucial try too. But look at Esterhuizen, this shows the flexibility. He's a massive inside center, right? But he ended up covering not just center, but also filling in at flanker at times during really intense periods.
Wait, a center playing flanker? That's a big ask tactically. How did that even work?
It worked because the bomb squad isn't just about positions, it's about bringing on powerful athletes. When you lose a forward, you might normally be scrambling. But bringing on someone like Esterhuizen, who is physically huge and defensively solid, allows them to plug a gap temporarily, maybe in the back row defense or at breakdowns, using his sheer power until they can adjust again. It's an immediate patch, not a weakness.
And Jones saw this power of the bench idea playing out elsewhere too, right? Not just a South Africa thing.
Yeah, he pointed it out as a general trend. Mentioned England getting over Fiji, Ireland beating Japan games where the replacements, the finishers, really swung the result in the final stages.
He had specific data on that Ireland-Japan game, didn't he? Something about samurai stats.
It did. It's an internal metric Japan uses. Tracks, like effective versus ineffective actions, especially when players are tired. Quantifies effort, execution under pressure. And the stats from that Ireland game, they apparently showed Japan's 8 finishers were just well beaten by the Irish subs. Much less effective.
And the result on the scoreboard?
Stark. Japan conceded 19 points to 0 in the last 15 minutes. 19 unanswered points. It just proves, the game now often hinges on the quality right through your 23-man squad, not just the starting XV.
So Jones's conclusion really is that building that squad depth, which he says South Africa does better than anyone right now, gives you that vital flexibility, lets you finish games really strongly.
Absolutely. It almost redefines what team strength means. Starters set the platform, maybe, but the bench increasingly decides the outcome. South Africa winning despite the red card wasn't some miracle. It was, you could argue, their system working exactly as designed to cope with the interruptions that are just part of modern rugby.
Okay, this whole conversation, safety versus interpretation on one hand, and this powerful bench strategy on the other, it raises some really big questions about where the game is heading. We genuinely love to hear your thoughts on this. Where do you stand on the head contact process? Does it need more flexibility? Let us know. And please subscribe to Rugby Obsession so you don't miss these discussions.
Yeah, so wrapping this up, you really see 2 big forces at play here, don't you? You've got the constant push-pull between safety rules like the head contact process, designed to protect players, and then coaches like Jones pleading for, well, common sense interpretation in the heat of the moment. But then, almost immediately, that whole debate gets kind of overshadowed by the strategic reality of the bomb squad approach, showing that maybe deep squads are the ultimate answer to dealing with cards and injuries in the modern game.
And the debate definitely rages on. We saw other articles mentioning calls for stronger leadership from World Rugby to clear things up, while others think defenders of de Jager are just missing the point about safety. So the question we leave you with is this. Can rugby keep its spectacle, its raw power, while enforcing safety laws so strictly that key moments, key players get impacted by decisions some critics are calling ridiculous? Where's that balance? Thank you so much for joining us for this in-depth discussion. Make sure you are subscribed to Rugby Obsession.
Thank you for listening to the Rugby Obsession Deep Dive, and we will look forward to you listening to our next episode.